Welcome. My name's Luke George, and I am having conversations with courageous educators. I'm so excited to have as our special guest today a person who optimises best practice in leadership. She's been recognised as a Principal of the Year. She spent time at the Harvard Business School, and recently all this experience has culminated in 2024 opening a new school. She's vibrant, she's enthusiastic, and she's so inspiring. Please welcome Louise O'Donovan. Hello, Louise O'Donovan. How are you today?
Hi, Luke. Thank you. Thank you for having me. That was it's a very lovely introduction. Thank
Well,
you.
well, as our guests, as our listeners are about to find out, it's pretty well all true. So let's start at the beginning, like all good stories, Louise. So where did you grow up and what was your family life like?
Well, I am very proud to say that I grew up in Armidale, and I'm an Armidale girl through and through. And my parents immigrated to Australia in 1969 from England, but they were both born in India, so they were immigrants to England, and then they immigrated to Australia. So they moved to Armidale in 1971, and I came along and I grew up in Armidale, and I can honestly say I loved my childhood was amazing. I had hardworking parents who worked hard. They were they had a good moral compass. They were grew up in a Catholic environment, but I went to public school in Armidale. I went to Chalice Community Primary School. I went to Cecil Andrews High School. So I'm a product of a good public school system, and
Wow.
yeah, I'm proud to say I'm from Armidale.
And it's great. Armidale is a beautiful place, as is every suburb in WA. Now, I'm interested in what drew you to be an educator? What was that passion, or maybe none, to become an educator?
I know this sounds a little bit corny, but I've always wanted to be a teacher from very, very young. When I was, 7 or 8, I can remember lining up my little baby cousins and teaching them and having a blackboard and getting them to read books and getting them to do dictation. And it was just this innate love of wanting to, I suppose, probably boss people around, but also to make a difference. So I honestly think that I've got a vocation for teaching. I feel it 100% in my bones. There's nothing else I want to do, and I've always wanted to be a teacher.
Oh, that's look. That would be the same for me as well. Always wanted to be a teacher in education, helping people, and it's interesting. You've been in the education industry for 32 years, and we share an actual common place of where we both started our teaching practice. And could you just fill us in where you started and what that experience was like? So a couple of years ago, so long.
Well, it was a little bit more than a couple of years ago, but my very first teaching post at the very young age of 21 was in Halls Creek in 1992, and I've come across quite a lot of people who had their first posting in Halls Creek, and it certainly was an initiation into a remote community, but I learned very quickly the skills of the trade because have we had to make a difference to the children in Halls Creek. So we had a great team up there, but we worked really hard to make sure that, we had a safe environment for them. But I learnt so much about Aboriginal education, about living in a remote community, and about the absolute importance of education and how education is it's the pathway out of poverty and out of disadvantage. And we can say that it's great rhetoric to say that, but when you actually see it being a life or death situation where children have to have that pathway out, it really impacted me, and it really resolved my moral purpose. So my moral purpose in making sure that all children have a good education to have life outcomes.
Yeah. Look, and just reflecting back on that, Louise, I'm not too sure how many years you spent there, but did you actually see some advancement, a few students that actually moved forward, or later on in your years, you might have got a call or a card or something that just said you made that little bit of difference that you were so passionate about?
I mean, I think, whether we realize it or not, I think we make a difference to all the children we come in contact with in some small way. Um, I haven't actually had any contact with any students from Halls Creek, unfortunately. I'd love to have
Mm.
kept in touch with some of my students. I was actually teaching music, so it was a little bit of a different context. So I had the whole school, and they all came to me, and we did the whole recorder business and the choir, and I played in the school band, and it was lovely to get to see that side, that creative side of our students. But yeah, no, I think about them all the time, and I wonder what they're doing, and I wonder what their life trajectory was.
Mm.
But
Mm.
yeah, it was an interesting time.
I think that's the essence of teaching, isn't it? It's not that we're going to see the outcomes every time, but it's about having that conscious decision every day. I'm going to make a difference, and where that child takes that bit of information, that bit of inspiration, that bit of engagement mightn't be found out for years to come. So I dare say, not only at Halls Creek, but in all the schools that educators are at, they make a difference in some way. Not necessarily
Yeah,
immediately, but it comes in afterwards.
and it's really good to um, think about every single interaction we have with students, whether we think we're having an impact or not.
Mm.
They We create their memories, so we're creating the fabric of their lives. Whether we think we are or not, but our interactions, the way we speak to them, the words of kindness, the words of encouragement, the words of support, all contribute to how they feel about themselves. But sometimes we think we're not making an impact, but I think we make an impact for every child we come in contact with.
Yeah, yeah. It actually reminds me of this story in 2023, the young girl who won the Beasley uh, Academic Award. And when she was asked who was someone significant in her life, she actually reached back in as a year 12 student back to her year 4 teacher, Miss Pritchard. And I just smiled at that,
Yeah,
because I dare say Miss Pritchard didn't realise the sort of difference she was making. But it's that recognition that
yeah,
comes later on in life as teachers. And I think it would be lovely for every teacher to get a letter and find out where every student went. But I don't think that's what we should be looking at. It's all about just what we do on a daily basis. Yeah. So there's been a few
yeah.
significant acknowledgements that you have, and I'd like to start with one back in 2019 when you received an invitation to go to a what school was that one that you went to?
I was lucky enough to win a place in the fourth cohort of 20 principals to go to Harvard in 2019, and it was the Leadership and Evolving Vision. So it was the LEV program, and it was amazing. I still pinch myself today. Was it actually true? Did it actually happen? Standing on the steps of Harvard and thinking, this is a dream. But it was one of my career highlights, and I feel very lucky and very honoured and privileged to have had that opportunity. But yeah, it was an amazing trip.
Now, I know that from that trip, you took away quite let me say, a mantra from a Peter Drucker that was quite significant in your leadership, that you, I suppose, is really passionate about, in particular education. I know you're passionate about a few things. Can you just tell us what that mantra is and why it's so important for you and your peers?
Well, the theme of our program at Harvard was culture and how we build strong school culture, but also how we identify as a leader. So, one of the phrases was, "Who we are is how we lead." But the phrase that I always say at staff meetings and PL days and school development days is, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast," because my absolute passion and my moral purpose is to create an environment where people love coming to work, and students feel safe and loved, and staff feel safe and loved. And I'll talk a little bit about starting a new school this year, but our ethos is we want all students to love coming to school, and we want all teachers to love their students, because we want to build that culture. I think, if you get culture right, everything just falls into place from that. But, it's not easy. It's not an easy, just click your fingers and you have good culture. You have to work on it every single day.
Culture. Now, I'm interested about this culture because I'm sort of thinking that that's how you got to be Principal of the Year in 2021. And besides the culture, as you said, it's not easy. How did you get everybody on board? And what were some of the elements of that, of the years preceding 2021, where you actually got Principal of the Year?
Well, during that time, I was principal of Beeliar Primary School, and we were lucky enough to be part of the Fogarty Advance program. So for over 3 years, we had a leadership program for our leadership team and the whole school. And part of the program was actually measuring our culture using the Organisational Health Index from McKinsey. And the OHI is a global index that surveys organisations. So it's not just an education survey, it's a global company survey, and they survey thousands of people. And we scored for 3 years in a row at Beeliar. We scored in the top 10th decile for organisational health.
Wow.
And for me, that is honestly, it's one of my career highlights, because it actually quantified and qualified the culture that we had, because sometimes culture is just a way that people feel, or how they feel when they walk into your school. But to actually have a number that says we're in the top 10th decile for organisational health globally was a really special achievement for us. And the thing that I'm most proud of is that we scored 100, which is the top mark, for shared vision. And that means that every single person who filled in that survey had this exact same vision across the school. So, from education assistants to teachers to gardeners to cleaners to our office staff, we all shared that vision. And so I'm very proud of that, because that means that we can gain traction in whatever we do, because everybody is on board.
All that shared vision, it's one of those very crucial points in any particular organisation, especially schools. Again, you'd think it'd be so easy. We've just spoken about how important education is for students. Every educator comes in passionate to make a difference. But it's not as easy just for everyone to agree on this is the way forward. I'd be interested in what are some of the small things or big things that you did that actually got people to believe in that shared vision? Was it that they created it together? Did you do workshops? How did you actually pull that together? Because I know that at Beeliar, it was already an established school. So you were coming in after someone. And then you've got change management to sort out as well. What was any couple of little tips and tricks that you might have, Louise, for this shared vision?
I listened and read a wonderful book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why, and it really resonated with me, because starting with the why of why you're doing anything helps people to understand the direction that you want to take, and the importance of that direction. And I think backing up that why with research, with the science of, teaching and learning, and just being vulnerable and authentic around your moral purpose. Like, we're here for students. We want to have the absolute best outcomes for students. Every decision we make is about students. And I think if staff know that, and they know that you are 100% making decisions and implementing change for that purpose, and they understand the why behind it, it's inspiring for staff, because they know what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I think they feel empowered because they know that they're making a difference. So
Yeah.
it's all the that so, and Simon Sinek says, he says something beautiful, which it sticks with me every single day. He says, building culture is like falling in love. You don't know when it happens. You don't know the exact day or moment that you have good culture, but it's all the little things along the way. So like the welcomes in the morning, and they're checking in on teachers after school, and they're supporting them when they have a difficult student in their class, or validating their great work that they're doing in their reading program. All those little things build culture. So my husband brings me coffee every morning, and yeah, that helps. That helps us stay in love.
That's gorgeous. Yeah, I like. It's like the one percenters of James Clear in creating habits. It's just the micro habits, or it's
Yes.
the one percenters rather than the big vision stuff. So have that big vision, but it's all the little things that count. And must gain momentum as you move forward. So you get a few people on board and a few others, and then they get excited, and it pretty well just creates this wave, and it just pulls people into the vision that
Yeah.
you've created with, I dare say, the rest of the group. I'm loving that, and I love that idea of falling in love. Simon Sinek, such a inspirational gentleman. Uh, so as a leader, is there any challenges that you've had? Because you've sort of shown us this glossy Louise O'Donovan that's just sort of come through 32 years, and it's been Harvard Business School and Principal of the Year. But what are some of the challenges that you've had? And I'm really interested in how we get out of that, because the current climate, pretty well any climate in any organisation at the moment, is that workload and the stress, etc. But so where have you been in that space, and how are you getting out of it? So challenges, what I'd be really interested in.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. When I was at Harvard, we had to do an activity around our immunity to change. So what actually prevents us from, taking that next step forward in our leadership? And we had to dive into our identity and who we are as a leader, and what motivates us, and what our strengths are, and what our weaknesses are. And it was interesting that one of the things that I have to work on is that I want everybody to like me. So I want to be liked. I want to have all the positives, and so my challenge is having those difficult conversations, and I hate to even call them difficult conversations, because I don't like to go down that negative part. But giving people feedback has been a challenge of mine, and it has made me become a courageous leader, because there's a wonderful quote from Amy Fast that says, hard conversations don't have to be mean conversations. They don't have to take on a detached or authoritarian tone. Holding people to their greatness is perhaps one of the most loving actions we can take. Real accountability isn't a gotcha. It's an I see you. And I think that's my philosophy is, it's not a gotcha moment. It's not a you've done this wrong. It's how can I help you be the best that you can be? So from a strengths-based perspective, and holding people to account doesn't need to be with a big stick. It can be through love and warmth and genuine concern, and also support. Supporting them to get to the place that they need to be. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's not all rainbows and butterflies. There are times when those conversations need to be had, but I think if they're had with honesty and transparency, and people understand the why as to why you're having that conversation, it's made the process a lot easier for me. But it is a challenge for me.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a challenge for everyone. I like to think of, I agree with the idea of difficult conversations. I like to use the word courageous conversations. And if you've done your work as you have in regards to the vision, the why, your moral purpose, what we're doing is actually having a courageous conversation, maybe helping someone to understand that, hey, this is what we're trying to get to. What's the barrier, or what's that support that you need to get to that point, which comes back to what you're saying in regards to helping someone understand, rather than, I suppose, like you said, in regards to the stick. We don't need the sticks. We just need, not everybody can get on the bus at the same time. So a courageous conversation is maybe a little bit more of a positive than a difficult conversation. It's a challenge that we all
Absolutely. And I
have.
think absolutely, and you're 100% right, Luke. It has to come down to, does everyone have an understanding of the vision and the expectations? And that shared vision is so important to making sure that we're all on the same page moving forward. And then it's easy to have those conversations, or easier.
Easier, exactly. That they never get easy, shall we say? Because otherwise, they wouldn't be courageous anymore. They'd be more like a social conversation. Now, with all great leaders, there's been people that have been in their space to help them out. I'm interested. Is there anyone or any people that sit in your world that has been part of your journey, mentor, coach, or just a supportive person that you could tell us about? And by all means, share their names. We'd love to hear about other courageous educators.
I would love to share my very special mentor and person, my go-to person. I was lucky enough to be the deputy principal at Chalice Primary School, Chalice Community Primary School, for 10 years. And my principal was Dr. Lee Musamechi. Lee just received a honorary doctorate from Curtin University for her amazing work that she does with early intervention and wraparound services for schools. She is one of the most amazing, intelligent, warm, kind people that I've ever met. But what I love about Lee is that she is an intelligent person who understands the strategy and the vision for school success and understanding what that means for students, but also inspiring people to get there, inspiring people to get to be on that journey. So I just pretty much emulated whatever Lee did. So I watched her for 10 years. She coached me through, leadership. Our leadership style, our leadership styles are very different. So I'm not a clone of Lee. We have a different leadership style, but we share the same moral purpose and we share the same determination to make a difference for children. So Lee is my person. I talk to her every week. We walk around the bridges, the Canning Bridge. It's an hour walk every Sunday. We walk for an hour and we just talk. And we get to the end of the walk and it's like, oh gosh, is that hour up already? And we talk education. We talk research. We talk strategy. We vent. We talk about all the things that are difficult, and we help each other through, those tricky days and those tricky moments. And she's not only my colleague, but she's my friend. So
Absolutely.
Lee would be my mentor. She's my coach, and she's my friend.
Oh, that's a dream, really, to be able to get into that position. And I think it was 5 years you've been having those walks around the bridges and having those conversations.
Absolute 5 years since I left Chalice. We were like, hang on. You can't just leave and we not talk every day. So we made it as soon as I left Chalice in 2016. We started walking just so that we could keep in touch with each other.
And the interesting part about that, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I dare say that Lee gets a bit of information from you as well. So it's not just a one way; it's a two-way street, which enriches both people on the journey.
I think we've got to that point, Luke, where we're not mentor-mentee anymore. We're colleagues, and we share. We give back. It's a win-win for both of us because Lee's able to. Because I know the context of Chalice so well, and Lee's going into her 20th year, 21st year at Chalice.
Yeah.
She's able to bounce ideas off me, and I can give her that perspective from knowing the context, but also looking at it from a different, fresh eyes, or from a different angle. So it's definitely a win-win. We've become colleagues now.
Yeah,
We've moved
colleagues.
past that mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah. You just used a great word there, where I believe that it's essential for pretty well everyone, especially in the leadership area, is having a different perspective. Because like anything, we can get ourselves into our little caves and we think, oh, this is our world. And it does take courage and vulnerability, which you've mentioned before, and actually reach out and ask someone to hold you accountable, but then get a perspective. Because it's amazing what someone else can really shine the light on something that you've been looking at, and all of a sudden it just, yes. I dare say those moments. And would you say that that's an important part for any leader?
Oh, absolutely. And I think sometimes, especially when we get into that, we're busy, we're tired, we're stressed, we've got a lot of things going on. We become caught up in, I call it being on the dance floor, not on the balcony. We
Mm,
become caught up in the day-to-day events that happen, and we lose that big picture perspective sometimes. So I think being able to, when you're talking about what it's like being on the dance floor, being able to say, well, have you stood up on the balcony and had a look
mm,
at
mm.
everything from a bigger picture? It really does help, and we do that for each other. So,
Yeah.
but to have someone to actually have those conversations with is so important, because sometimes we slip onto the dance floor and we don't know we're there. We think we're on the balcony, but we're on the dance floor.
That's right. Now, I know you've got some particular passions. You've talked about purpose, you've talked about your leadership, you talked about vision, but I'm interested in about a curriculum piece, and you're pretty well over curriculum in a lot of ways because I know that you're a pretty good music teacher in your day. The whole idea of this science of reading, why is literacy so important for you, Louise, and for young people?
Oh, look, Luke, getting reading right has been my absolute passion, and I was lucky enough to use my Principal of the Year award um, money
Mm,
to go over to Melbourne and Sydney for the Science of Learning and Reading conference. But I have been interested in getting reading right for at least 15, 20 years, looking at the science of reading. And the reason it's a passion of mine, and I'll go back to my days at Chalice, was that we getting reading right, getting children literate by the time they leave school is for us back then, was literally a matter of life or death. Because if we didn't do that, if we weren't able to get reading right and get children reading, their life trajectory would be completely different to what the potential could possibly be. So we were very passionate about saying, okay, hang on, back then our data was terrible. We weren't getting the reading data, and
mm,
we started to have a look at the research. And in 2007, the National Inquiry into the Teaching of Reading came out, and we started to have a look at, okay, hang on, there's this thing called synthetic phonics. It's really important to understand the components of reading and phonics and letter and sound combinations. Before that, we had had a very whole language type
mm.
of approach to the teaching of reading. So I started to go down that pathway with unpacking the big six of reading and looking at the components of reading and making sure that we were teaching those components explicitly. And I then, it was only a couple of years ago, listened to the podcast Sold a Story by
Mm,
Emily Hanford, and
mm.
I cried at the end of that podcast. I cried because I thought, oh my goodness, I have been sold a story, and goodness knows, what damage I might have done to students before I understood how important research was into the teaching of reading. So if you haven't listened to Sold a Story podcast, I suggest get it on Spotify and have a listen. It will change your life.
Yeah.
And so I then made it my life's ambition, my career ambition, to become an expert in the teaching of reading, because I wanted to make sure that I could lead my staff to be experts in the teaching of reading. So going to those conferences, doing research. I've got a really good connection with Simon Pogleski from Edith Cowan University.
Mm.
So I've done lots and lots of research into the teaching of reading.
Yeah. And there's a couple of things there. Look, well, the very first one is that podcast was sent to me, same. I think there's like 5 episodes, and I was pretty well one after the other. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to say I cried, but I did feel a bit sick at the end thinking, wow, that was an incredible thing that happened so many years ago. So yes, definitely recommend to see Sold a Story. The other part that you were just commenting on also is when your time at Chalice, I always believe that a good education just gives anyone more choices. You actually expand the space that you can go into. And a poorer education limits your choices. And isn't it all about having choices? Isn't it fantastic to be able to get to year 12 and say, this is the world at your feet, or unfortunately for some little people, they've got a very narrow choice. And I'm really hearing that passion in you, that you really want to open up every person's potential for sure, but also the choice that they can make in life moving forward.
I was just going to say, absolutely, when we say we want to make a difference, that's a difference we make. You know, the difference we make is making sure that the children leave primary school with the skills to have life opportunities and to succeed in high school. So that, for me, that's the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's pretty well with every educator should have the same. Now, we've just talked about that science of reading, how important it is. If I wanted to do something now with that, what would be a recommendation of either I've heard about it, I'm thinking about it, or I know nothing about it? What would be a suggestion from Louise O'Donovan?
Well, I would definitely start by listening to Soldier Story, obviously, but I would go to the Australian Education Research Organisation website, AERO website. AERO is it's only I think about 3 years old. It's a research organisation that's funded by all states across Australia. So they independently research best practice in education, and they have all of the information in regards to the science of learning, the science of reading, cognitive load theory, all of the things that are going to make a difference, that's based in science and research and has the highest effect size for students in the classroom. So if you don't know where to start with Aero and go from there. And I think, I think there's a lot of information out there at the moment. I think, the science of reading is moving from being a niche practice to a mainstream practice. And there's been a lot of, there's been a lot of stuff in the media and the paper and on radio about whole language versus the science of reading. So there is a lot of information out there.
Yeah. And for listeners, what I'll do is I'll have the comments and references that Louise has used into websites and podcasts, and that'll be in our show notes. Thanks very, very much for alluding us to that one. Now, just a couple of questions just to sort of semi-wind down, but I'm interested in just your opinion of what stops schools from being high performing. As an opinion from Louise O'Donovan, is it just culture, or is there any other little suggestions? And of course, this is just Louise's opinion about some things in that sort of space.
This is just my opinion. I'm not going to be on the record about this, but look, I think 100% culture. You've got to get culture right. But once you've got culture right, you have to know what to teach in the right order and the right sequence with no gaps. And then you need to know how to teach it. And I think having a good understanding of curriculum and a good understanding of instructional practices will have that whole school consistency. One of the things that I do see happening in a few schools is a siloed approach where, teachers go into their classroom and they lock the doors and they do their own thing, and there's disconnected practice from other teachers in the school. And I think sometimes when that happens, we can't get traction in that cumulative effect of skill building, because everyone's doing their own thing. They might not be on the same page. They might not be following the same sequence. So I think consistent, connected practice is the key, and understanding the what and the how.
Interesting the way you finished that, the what and the how, and it just resonates straight back again. Why are we doing this? And it even would solve that situation as well, because silos wouldn't work in a shared vision and a culture where I love coming to school. Because if I love coming to school, I would love to be with my colleagues, and to be with my colleagues, I would need to then be connected. So it does come back to that. But I just love that piece of opinion that you've actually just given us. Now, one of the big things that's been sitting in my mind after all of this beautiful work that you've done is, what's it like opening a new school? I mean, 2024, the doors open, the children and the teachers just walk through that day. There's a massive amount of work beforehand. And now that you're in it, it must be ups and downs, challenges, rewards. What's it actually like? What's the feeling like to go through that?
Oh, look, it has been a career aspiration of mine to open a new school, and it has been absolutely wonderful, the most amazing thing that I could ever have done in my career. But it has also been one of the most challenging things I've ever done because I sort of didn't realize that you're it. You have to pretty much organize and make sure that every little thing that happens in a school is sorted and organized and prepared and ready to go. So it's been a wonderful experience, a challenging experience. One of the biggest challenges that we had, and one of the things I'm most proud of with Jilbup, is that we managed to get a Noongar name for our school, and it took a lot of work. It was probably one of the things that was that I worked on the most and was the biggest challenge, just to have the consultation around our name to make sure that it was appropriate. I can't thank the Aboriginal Reference, Coburn Council Aboriginal Reference Group enough for their support in making sure that we had a name that was appropriate for the area that our school is built. So the actual land on which our school is built is called Jilbup. It was the original name for the Beeliar wetlands. And I'm just so proud of that. So that makes me, I feel like, I've done a little bit just to leave a little bit of a legacy for future generations to know that, this school has, our name has a significant meaning and it's going to be there forever. So it's a little bit of a legacy, I
Mm.
hope.
Oh, fantastic. That is good. Thank you very much for that. That was really, it must be a proud moment to be able to look back on our career and to be able to put something in place. And getting on to a couple of other little pieces about Louise is what would be, where's your happy place? How do you wind down? Do you have routines? Do you have anything professional or personal that you do that helps you through the workloads and the significant amount of effort that you put into education?
I think one of the things that I consciously do is I consciously choose happiness. I consciously choose positive to be positive. I'm a naturally optimistic person, so I try to look for the glass half full, the happy ending at the end of the day. But not every day is like that, and there's some days are challenges, and some days I have had the tears, and it's like this is hard. So when that does happen, I make a conscious decision to fill my cup and to find the joy. And I go down to kindy and I sit with the kindy kids and I read them a story or build a castle with them and they fill my cup. I don't know if anybody has the same feeling when I go down to ECE. I feel like I'm Beyonce because it's Mrs. O'Donovan, Mrs. O'Donovan. And I feel a little bit special when I go down there. So that's my happy place from a professional point of view. But I just want to go back to that sort of choosing to be happy because sometimes it's very easy to let all the stresses of life really get us down, but to consciously stop and say, I'm just going to look at the sky today and look how beautiful it is, and I'm going to literally stop and smell the roses, or I'm going to just stop and have a conversation with my colleague because I just need to find that happy place again. They're the things I do consciously, and I know when I don't do them, I do find myself feeling more and more, going down that stress path.
Mm.
So just choosing happiness. I do have a gratitude journal. I do believe strongly in gratitude. I've got so many things to be grateful for in life, and I'm every day I'm grateful to my parents that they immigrated to Australia, so
Yeah.
I could have this amazing life and this amazing career. So it starts from just being grateful for every single thing, that all the opportunities that I have. I just consciously remember those things.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, gratitude. There's a lot of science behind that one. Now, I'm interested, um, 32 years in education. What advice would you give your 20-year-old self if you had that opportunity?
My 20-year-old self back in the days in Halls Creek, I would I would say to myself, teach synthetic phonics as one. So understand reading and get rid of that whole language stuff and teach reading. That would be my professional, what I'd say to myself. But what I'd say to myself is, you can do this. Step into your power. You're going to be okay. You just to recognize and to have the confidence in yourself that you've got the skills, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, here's the big one. Not only your 20-year-old self, what would you say to someone that's coming into the education game? They're thinking about it. They've got all those choices in front of them. And one of those choices is to become a teacher, educator, assistant, education assistant, any space in that area. And they're asking your advice, Louise. What would you say?
I would say it is the best job you can ever have. And I do not subscribe to the whole, don't get into teaching rhetoric that we're hearing in the press. Teaching is one of the most rewarding jobs you could ever have. You're making a difference to children's lives. Our most precious resource are our people. People are the most precious resource in our society and our economy. And we are at the ground coalface, being able to influence that and being able to make a difference. So get into teaching. There's so much, the joy and the love and the laughter and the happiness outweighs any of those things that, don't get me wrong, the workload is there and you have to work hard. It's not a walk in the park. There's a lot of things that you need to do and get your head around. But it is so rewarding at the end of the day. And, what other profession, there's not many professions that you can say you make a difference the way that you can make a difference in education.
Yeah, I love that. You always say it with passion, which is what we love about speaking with you, Louise. And you're quite correct. It's looking at some of your attributes that you've already talked about, choosing happiness, choosing gratitude. And any job has a workload to it. There is no occupation where it's just sitting around doing nothing and expecting some sort of reward, not necessarily financially. It's just reward within ourselves, that within our heart, that we are actually doing something fantastic. And that's exactly what I would say to anybody that would love to go into education. It's been a wonderful conversation, Louise. I've absolutely enjoyed your company. I dare say our listeners are mostly looking at those show notes and wondering which podcasts and where you're at, etc. Love that you've opened up a beautiful new school, and thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your teaching career.
Luke, thank you so much for having me.